Hi guys, this is Tushar, and thank you so much for joining in. This is episode number 2 of Breaking the Box, and today we have Sarthak Goyal, the founder of Invoid.
Hi
So
guys.
Sarthak, let's start with a very basic, the first question. How did you actually start? How did the idea come up? So take us back to your college days.
Sure. I've sold one solution to Government of India during my final year, and that sort of gave me a confidence that probably I can start something of my own. I can probably pitch. I know how to pitch a solution, exactly what the pain points are, and that's how the journey started. And I attended the MIT bootcamp. That's where I met my co-founder as well. And we came back. We realized there is a lot of gap in terms of implementation of machine learning in the computer vision domain, and that's how we started working. Initially our idea was around analyzing the CCTV footages in a physical store, in a brick and mortar retail store, but that didn't work out. There were some challenges, operational challenges, and we realized that won't scale. So we, 7 to 8 months down, uh, in the game, right, we realized that this wouldn't work. And so we pivoted to an idea where we realized that this is a very more generic and more common problem of solving trust between um, people who are sitting in any part of India and trying to avail a service, and to make sure that the brands are basically in full aware, for brands are fully aware of who they're onboarding, and it's not a fraudster, and there's a trust established between the customer and the brand. And also some of the brands who are supposed to follow certain guidelines and regulations in the market, they're able to comply with them as well. So that's how it started, with the retail prospect, as a retail as a good prospect, to pivoting to identity verification and onboarding for regulated entities.
All right. So, Sarthak, give us a little bit more details and to, a little bit more brief of what exactly does the startup do and how did you decide to pivot to a new domain, try it out, and then launch it fully?
Right. So, we started working in retail domain, right? And we did everything that was needed. Our primaries, our talks with bigger brands. We even sat with probably the biggest brands, retail brands in the country, and even global. And we did some POCs as well with that idea. But it was very important to realize, okay, this works and this does not. And we sort of acknowledged that early on. But at the same time, we realized and while we were conducting POCs, we tried multiple ideas with the same technology that we had built could be used. So we didn't try to put all of our eggs in one basket. We tried to diversify, since we were realizing that this is giving us some challenges. And at the same time, right, it was very coincidental. But so we were trying to book a cab for a meeting, and the wallet got blocked because there was no KYC done for that wallet. And the requirement was for me to go to a retail store, do my KYC, that too during work hours on weekdays, and that would be like 4 to 5 kilometers away from my home. Do my KYC, the retailer would get my documents, they would click the pictures of my documents, see my documents, send it to the wallet's office, and then there's somebody in the office seeing my documents again, validating them, verifying them, and then after 3 to 4 days I would get a confirmation, and that could be a rejection as well, right? I might not know what's wrong as a customer. Really don't know what is the right thing or wrong in when we talk about regulations. And that's exactly where I realized that, we realized that this is the problem statement which could definitely be solved with sophisticated technologies such as machine learning. And we set out to build models. We started some POCs with organizations, and to be honest, this wasn't really a difficult um, problem to explain to a potential customer, right? They were already facing it. They already knew that this is something which they need. So we started with smaller players, right? We started with smaller companies, did POCs with them. They liked the product. They helped us shape it, right? So more important part of the problem was to understand uh, 70% of the problem statement, not run after perfection, and try to build a product which works, and then shape it in a way that it becomes that people come to you and ask for the product instead of you go and sell it to them.
So Sarthak, you told that at a point of time you guys were at a standstill and you guys were thinking of pivoting your business. So whenever there is an entrepreneur and they've started something, the idea and the concept and the business is very close to their heart. Was there a time at that period, at that point of time in your life that you were looking at other options? Were you looking at yaar ye kaam nahi kar raha, should we go back to our job? Was this going at back of your mind at that point of time?
I think it was too early to take the last resort, right? I mean, obviously, now that I think of, it was definitely a decision that I'd taken way earlier than I should have. Right? I should have done more research, should have done more POCs before I left my job. So, but then at that point of time, we didn't really think, because we got some good mentors in the starting. So it was like we knew that the tech stack could be pushed or shifted or tweaked to get a better problem statement. So I think the problem statement is what we try to figure out always, that okay, this there might be another problem statement for which we could solve. So we didn't really feel like we should leave this in, but obviously we had a low points, and only when you hit the bottom rock is when you sort of lift. So we, at that point of time, they were yeah, they were, even after we pivoted, right, there were points where we thought that okay, this is getting tougher. Okay, we need to make this much revenue by this month in order to sustain, in order to, or else this isn't working, and we should set a timeline for us. Okay, when, if by this point of time we are not able to do this expected output, then we should reconsider everything. So hopefully, I mean, luckily, thank God we didn't, we had that month in mind, but we didn't really we sort of got the expected output.
Great. And Sarthak, it is said a person is born an entrepreneur. So if a person has an entrepreneurial skill, they would start right from the beginning. So tell us about your college days. Of how did you really discover that you would want to do something as an entrepreneur and you want to be an entrepreneur? Even after taking a job and a well-paying job, you left the job and took this decision. So how did your college years look like?
And college years were, I mean, so I did my engineering, right? I did my engineering in computer science, and I started. I mean, when I entered college, I I didn't know that I would actually be. I would like a problem statement, and I would go out and build a solution for it. So, I mean, the first problem statement. So it's usually a problem statement that you've suffered that will
Correct.
motivate you enough to create a solution. And so, I mean, there was a classic. I mean, there is a startup or there is a project in every college where somebody might be being the mediator or the broker of I mean, the books that the seniors want to sell to juniors. So I started with that basic B plan, you might call it. And I mean, I tried to shape it more as a perspective to understand that okay, there are a lot of other things that which acts as a gap between a senior and junior communication, especially specifically if your college has a lot of day scholars instead of hostels. So we built that, and then realized that okay, this requires a lot more attention and a lot more operational capabilities. So decided to stop pursuing that, decided to basically continue my degree and do everything as is required. And then I got an opportunity again in my final year to basically submit another project, and that project was basically for a hackathon, and that was the first edition, and that was a problem statement given by the government of India, right, Department of Science and Technology. So we presented a solution, they really liked it, and i think I think that was the point where I realized, I mean, as I was mentioning earlier, right, so I mean, that was the second time I was selling something in my college years, and we got paid for it, right? It was important that whatever you're selling, you're getting paid for it. Never do something for free. So I got paid for it, for the project that we sold to the government as well. So that was another sort of point in my uh, board, right? Okay, I've done this as well. I should try it, and if I fail, right, I mean, I can always come back to what I'm trying to do, what I anyway was doing. So that, I think that taking that jump is very important, and that's what I did.
Correct.
I
Correct.
wouldn't say it was born in me, but
Hmm.
yes, I'm sort of, I understand that um, I want to, like, if I'm told to do something, I would rather explore a lot of other things associated with it than
Mhm.
just do that point
Be
A
a
to
little
B.
bit more creative on
Yeah,
my own.
yeah.
All right. All right, Sarthak. So, even after taking a job, you were very sure that you don't want to do that job and you want to try something of your own. But, job is very secure. You get a salary every month. Entrepreneurship, being an entrepreneur is very, very unpredictable. Things happen haywire. So, how can you take us back to that feeling of
Hmm.
what were you thinking when you were leaving your job and you were, getting yourself into mode, ki, "Yaar, ab to I have to start my own business and I have to do it on my own."
Hmm.
So, what were you feeling at that point of time?
So I tried to make it more calculative, but it doesn't work like that. I mean, I thought that, okay, certain POCs will work, I will leave my job. But then I knew that, okay, I will have to leave it in order to pursue something full time. And I mean, my job was really great. I mean, I still remember, and I had no dissatisfaction with my job as such. I mean, it was paying me enough, and it was actually very cool, right? So I was already working in a mid level. I mean, it's a highly grown startup as well, but then it was very comfortable. So I think that is the reason why I sort of decided that I wanted to get in a tougher situation.
Mhm.
And I think I was like, okay, this is fine, and I'm liking it. I think I can sort of be in a more harsh environment and try to find something more interesting. And that's how it started, right? And and the best part of it is that your friends and family are supportive of it, and that's something that I've been lucky, very lucky, that my parents have always supported this. And I mean, obviously, if there is growth, then they really don't mind. You just have to tell them, and I think they were able to understand, and that's very important. That is the most important thing that will uh, that was a that helped me cross over that uh, uncertainty, the period of uncertainty.
Okay. And Sarthak, as you said, you were working in a startup, Ixigo, which is one of the
Yeah,
very good startup when it comes to. I think they're into travel, and they have a lot of good applications as well, which
yeah,
are very, very highly downloaded applications on Play Store.
that's
So
right.
was it because of that you are already in the startup field and you're working in a startup that you're like very, very fascinated by doing something of your own and scaling it up?
Very interesting. I mean, you've asked this, and this is something which you'd find a lot on the internet. If you just go and Google Ixigo Mafia,
Hmm.
okay, so there was something in the West called PayPal Mafia,
Hmm.
okay, and PayPal Mafia was that people would work in PayPal and realize that, okay, they have a lot more things that they can do, and there are numerous startups uh, born out of PayPal, right? People left PayPal, and this was something which is happening in Ixigo, right? It happened in Flipkart. You'll see that
Correct.
people in Flipkart who've left Flipkart and started something of their own, and this is something which is a very common phenomenon in Ixigo.com. I mean, if you just Google Ixigo Mafia, you'd find a lot of them, because I think it's a very good place to understand how a startup works. The founders are all there all the time, and they directly interact with you. And I mean, the hierarchy was very flat, and
Mhm.
that sort of, yes, that definitely acted as an enabler of, okay, if this is school, and if this is something that I can build, I mean, I should definitely go and try it out. And that was definitely a motivator. And I think if you see the startups which are born out of Ixigo, they're all doing pretty well. I think they're excellent bunch of people. They hire excellent bunch of people, and uh, not boasting, but just saying the other people that I saw around me were very excellent, and they were very, very talented.
Great. So, Sarthak, you also mentioned that your parents were very, very supportive of you, taking like an untrodden path.
Hmm.
And you mentioned previously that your parents are government job employees. So, when we keep it on a scale of riskiness, we
Hmm.
see that having a government job is like one of the most safer options. So, was it difficult for your parents, and how did you really convince them, and why do you think they absorb this idea of their son doing something which is very, very risky and very, very unpredictable?
I think they're still adopting to it. They haven't really questioned a lot, but they're sort of absorbing everything and seeing how it's going. And I mean, even even for every venture or anything that I've taken up in the past, they've realized that I've taken it myself without any influence or without any support. I mean, there is always support of people, but then it was something which took out of my own curiosity, or how I was able to, let's say, for a job as well, right? It was not a campus placement, it was an off-campus placement. So they knew that I could probably take steps and try to figure out something. So they sort of trusted me. But regarding the government job, I think I'm not sure if they're still convinced about it. But I mean, oh yeah, they're absorbing it, and there is no, as such, government job is a very uh, secure job, obviously, and the only challenge is there are lots of people appearing for it, and the seats are handful. That's the only thing. Or else, I think I really envy the life they have, they've built.
Great, Satak. So, what would your mother say whenever you are having a good day? Would she say that everything is going to turn all right, or would she say that leave this thing, go back and do your job, which is like a more better one, or maybe not exactly the better one, but a
Yeah.
safer one?
What she'd always say is, I mean, if you think that this is fine, then go about it. If you have a doubt, just think about it again. And she wouldn't tell me to take path number A or path number B, but she would always tell me that she still tells me that if you think this is fine, then go do it. Just make sure that you are absolutely certain about this and not in two minds. And that's the only thing that she would say. I mean,
Great,
yeah.
absolutely. And so what I have also felt in my personal life, and I'm pretty sure you would also relate because you are also very young and you started very young, is that we definitely compare ourselves to our colleagues, to our friends,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
we started at the same time. They have started their jobs, and we are starting as an entrepreneurs. So how does that feel like? Because people and your friends would have a better, a comfortable job, they would be earning better, they would be doing pretty well, but you as an entrepreneur would be obviously struggling in your initial
Hmm.
years. So how do you really make yourself feel on the same page or even better when it comes to those days?
I think uh, usually friends are very supportive of it because they now the ecosystem is so much more mature that everybody is able to see how entrepreneurship works. And as more and more startups, basically Indian startup ecosystem is growing like crazy, right? There's been funding all over, and specifically if you take up a field like where we are working, right, it's regulatory technology or fintechs, regarding banks, it's a good space. And so in terms, if I had to sort of compare, that would be sort of unjust because everybody has their own set of paths to take. And considering that I took an entrepreneurial path, they were pretty supportive about it. And I mean, I would still hang out with them, right? And uh, we would talk about stuff. And it's interesting because we bring a bit different perspective and they bring in a different perspective. So I haven't really felt that, okay, there's been a difference. It's been very similar as such.
All right, that's great. So it is very important to have like a very good
That's
support
right.
system of people even outside the startup ecosystem, so
Absolutely.
that they can absolutely give you like a new perspective and a different perspective.
Because they keep you sane, right? I mean,
Correct.
you need to have people with different perspective or else you're stuck.
Exactly. So Sarthak, you got to attend the MIT boot camp, which was like a very selective program, and it was conducted by MIT.
Hmm.
So can you tell us about how did you really apply? How was this entire experience, and what kind of value addition was there when you attended and interacted with a lot of people over there?
I think so. I knew I had this urge of starting something of my own, and it was during the final year of college that I started looking at avenues which would help me take it in a more calculative manner rather than just me going out and trying to do something. I preferred that I had some coursework or I had some framework in my mind, or or knew enough, exposed to enough opportunities to understand what I should do and what I should not. So that was the main reason why I preferred to go there. And I think what it taught basically was, of course, they had excellent mentor sessions, right? So they were people, ex Navy SEAL. So there would be an ex Navy SEAL who would come up and tell us what their hardships were and how they overcame that. And then there is, on the other hand, then there is a CEO of Domino's who comes and gives you a lecture. So you can basically see what's the basic that you need to do in life, whatever be the venture, right? If it was a war zone, what decisioning would you make? And if it wasn't, what decisioning would you do? And so that was the most important thing. That was exposure to a lot of other things that you wouldn't get sometimes when you're sitting at home. Right now, it's easier to get exposure. I'm talking something about just 2 to 3 years ago, right? And obviously COVID wasn't there, and most of the things would happen physically. You couldn't just log onto a website and see, okay, there's a webinar and I can go and attend it. So to get exposure, you had to go to those events. So I think exposure was the main thing that I got from that boot camp.
All right, great. So as you've already mentioned COVID, I would directly jump onto how COVID has affected your business. Would you say that it has affected your business in a positive light, or there have been certain pushbacks that have been there?
Right. So it's a mix. Initially, when COVID hit, right, we were working with clients who got affected. So we are a B2B company, right? We depend on the businesses to do well, or we rather help them do well so that we can do well in that order. And so when COVID first hit, the lockdown was there. It was very difficult because these clients were having problems in their business, and it was difficult for them to sort of pivot or adapt quickly, and in turn it started affecting us. But what we realized was, I mean, obviously our business teams, hats off to the business team, right? They realized that there were other avenues, there were other companies who would rather need this product more because of COVID, right? Because everybody's getting so the system is distributed, right? Your workforce is now sitting at home, and you can't really you would want them to be want to get 100% efficiency. You might not, because then there is work from home setting that you need to set up first, but your business cannot be affected in that period of time. So there were companies who basically demanded this sort of product, and we were quick enough to basically know which industries would need this. If these industries are suffering, what are the industries who are going to gain out of it, and how can we make their business, or how can we help them? So it was a dip, right, when COVID hit, but then since then it's been a good it's a good progressive curve as such, because there are a lot of businesses now that they want to give service through online mechanisms, but they're not sure who to trust and who not to when they give out the resource, when they're lending, let's say, or when they're providing you an exchange, you giving you securities, and then uh, onboarding you for some other purpose, right? Be it a dating website or anything. You need to make sure. So um, it's been good for business as such, though times are unfortunate. But we're happy that we're able to help certain people also avail services, right? There's a lot of financial inclusion that we enable through our product. Because we get customers from, so our businesses get customers even from tier 3 cities, tier 3, tier 4 cities, where physical meetup during the lockdown was a problem. So they were able to onboard them because everybody has a mobile device now. Everybody's well versed with video calling. Everybody's well versed with how to handle gallery, how to handle media in their phones. And so we took that as a point, and companies also trusted the system to onboard customers remotely, and then everything started getting back to normal for all the industries as the times have progressed.
Great, Satak. Since you've started in Void,
Hmm.
which one day would you say has been the best day in office?
In office,
In office,
uh,
in this entire journey of this time, which one is the best day?
hmm, I think uh, when we so it's a we need to get a recurring revenue, right? We need to make sure the client who pays this month also takes a service, also pays us
Correct.
in next month, and
Mhm.
also pays the next to next month. So I think when we established a player who was paying us for 3 months, so at the end of the third month, when we raised the invoice and we got the payment, right, that was the day where we realized, okay, this is something that will go on, right? They need a product monthly on month basis, and that was a good feeling, right? That made us realize that, okay, the product is uh, it has a recurring mode of payment, because that makes a lot of difference when you're pitching it to investors, right? They're looking for somebody some company who gets payment on a recurring basis. It's not a service based company, it's a product based company. I think that was the best day where we got recurring payments from different clients. And then obviously, yeah, I mean, you have to find you have to find your good days yourself. There are no days which will come up and tell you that okay, but you really have to find small happiness. Or I mean, you have to realize okay, this is good, and probably this might not be good for everybody else, but I feel that okay, that's a good achievement. It's a small or how big it may be. So you really have to find that in your journey.
All right. So, because there are good days, there are bad days as well.
Right.
So, which one would you say, if you could, give us like a more personal view and take us deep inside of which one was the day that, you were not very happy with how things were going?
I think it was just before COVID, right? We were targeting certain customers, and it was being very difficult to break through. That was the day where we realized that okay, this is our target month, where we need to see if this is working or not. I think the time where COVID hit, and sort of a few days before lockdown, sorry, lockdown hit, and a few days before lockdown, that was when we were expecting okay, this is a good deal that we're going to get. We're going to This is a good deal for us. We're going to get this client on board, and this is going to be huge. And that's exactly when lockdown hit, right? And that client refused to sign the deal. And that was like we were so close. We were pursuing them for months and months, and this was going to be a make or break deal, and this would change the few months that we are seeing for our business. And this is a good deal. We should get that. And that's when lockdown happened, and they did not sign it, right? And that was the day where we realized okay, this is serious. And we were so close to getting this client. And I'm talking about a big client, right? They're the leading in the nation. And that was a bad day. And that was a bad day. But then the good part is that 3 to 4 months after the lockdown, we have them right now they are with us. They use our product. It's just that sometimes it's difficult to see the bigger picture, or difficult to see what's coming. And yeah, I think that was the day.
So, Sarthak, I believe that because, it is a part of the entrepreneurial journey, you have to face a lot of no's as well. So there are a couple of yeses, there are a couple of no's. So how do you really make yourself feel better, or how do you really, pick yourself up whenever there is a no,
Hmm.
or either from the investor or from the customers or from the clients?
No, it's very difficult, right? Because everybody has expectations and hopes from something, and if that does not work out, it's really obviously you're dejected. To be honest, you should get used to a lot of no's. And specifically if you're becoming an entrepreneur, or you're trying to pursue an entrepreneurial journey, no's are going to be very often. And it's going to be like 100 no's and a single yes. That's going to be the ratio probably. But the good part is you need that one yes, right? And you should always look towards that one yes, or the two yes, second yes that you're going to get. Because you can fail like 99 times, but what works is you have to be successful only once. And I think we always looking towards that yes. That's all right. We get a lot of no's, and the people who say no to you uh, today. And you should always hope that your biggest achievement from that would be converting that no into a yes. How would you convert that? And take that as a feedback rather than a dejection. Take that as a feedback and try to work on it, so that you can get a yes from them within a few months and within a few weeks. So I think the yeses are what you look forward to, and the nos are simply feedback. And you should take them as a feedback and not as a disappointment. Of course, starting of a journey, we used to be a lot more dejected with nos, obviously, because you're not really accustomed to that sort of environment where everything is going no no
I
no
know.
for you. And I think the better I mean the best would be that you get a lot of no's early, so
Hmm.
that you know what you should do to get a yes. Because if you're not getting a lot of no's, you're doing something. I mean, you should reconsider what you're doing. There cannot be a lot of yeses. There has to be a lot more no's than yeses.
All right. So Sarthak, any practical hack or any nuskha that you do to keep yourself going, even after so many no's and so many dejections?
I think you have to find small motivation every other day. I can't really think of one thing that keeps me going, but I think I can't really think of any one thing that will help you move forward. But I think again, look forward to people who are giving you feedback, and improvement is the key, right? So what drives me is improvement in the feed for the feedback that I've got, right? If a customer says I'm not buying you because of this, so I will rather obviously take that as a feedback, take that as a no, feel a bit disappointed about it, but then I would really be happy about knowing that okay, I know what works, right? I know what does not work. Now I know what will work. So I'm more interested in fixing that and going to the next client probably with a better solution. I think that is what drives me, improving, at least in the product sense, right? I mean, there's a lot to learn in personal life, of course, but when you talk about product, purely the product, then the customer feedback, even for the customers who don't buy your product, is important, and that really drives me to make it in a more make it more full stack, more end to end, and more viable for the customer as well.
All right. All right, Sarthak. Um, so, because an entrepreneur keeps on struggling, there are a lot of different feelings that keep on happening. You keep on seeing other people doing really good. They're raising a lot of funding. Startups in general, your
Hmm.
friends in general,
Hmm.
are doing a lot of good things. So, how do you really handle that intimidation that happens?
Uh, it's still there, right? I'm very early in the entrepreneurial journey. I am still in a very early journey, very early in the journey. Sorry, and I think uh, you need to set a very proper base when you're starting up, because you need to know what is going to happen. It's a very difficult journey, and it's very glamorous from outside. Sometimes it does seem glamorous. Okay, this startup has raised $1 billion of funding, but it's like it's definitely very unbiased towards the founder. The ratio, right? Even the mathematics are
Correct.
really biased again, biased, not in the favor of founders. So you should actually know, and you should sort of learn. I mean, we're still trying to understand that, and what does not work, you should know, and you should have your basics set, right? This is what I'm going to have in for the next few years of my life, or for the next few months of my life, and I should be okay with it, because the thing that I am set for, or the thing that I want to pursue, is probably much bigger than what I am having right now, and you should sort of make that as your when you wake up, right, or when you go to sleep, this is something that should always keep you up, that uh, keep you up, as in should motivate you, that okay, this is the reason why I started this, and okay, I will continue doing it till a point where I know what it's not working. So till the time you've tried your best, I think you should keep on going, and just make sure that whatever you're planning is what you actually want, and that will sort of be the north star metric that you want to achieve while you're waking up every day.
Great, great, Satak. So the next question which I want to ask is a very interesting question, and I get a lot of interesting answers and different perspectives. What would you prefer? Would you prefer perfection or would you prefer punctuality, and why?
uh, as in I'm not sure if perfection and punctuality can be sort of kept in the uh, ba- uh, same balance, but
Let's say perfection versus speed. Do you have to deliver on time, or you have to ensure the quality is good?
okay, I think I'm uh, uh, very biased towards speed and timing and opportunity, versus pursuing something till the time it's perfect. Because in the domain that we work, or even in the entrepreneurial domain as a whole, timing is very important, and you can't really afford to lose a particular opportunity just because you were out to make it perfect, right? If somebody needs your product, you should go ahead and give it at a 70% stage or an 80% stage, and keep on working till the point it becomes perfect, but don't wait for it to be perfect, because that you might just lose time and lose the opportunity, because opportunities are like, you're going to knock a door for 100 days, and probably the next days when somebody is going to open, you can't really wait, okay, I need to make it perfect. So I mean, you're going to knock every day, right? You're going to knock every day, and simultaneously you're going to build the product. So when the time it's like 60% or 70% there, I think you should knock the doors and not wait it to be 100% perfect, because even how much you convince that it's the 100% is the perfection, you might miss points, and you can't. You can afford to miss the points, the finer details, but you can't afford to miss the opportunity and the timing. So I think I'm more of a non-perfect go to go for it type of a person.
And I absolutely agree with you on this one. So I was a couple of days back, I was watching this TED talk. I'm not
Hmm.
very sure of the name of the speaker, but he was talking about why do startups succeed.
Hmm.
And the number one reason that that guy found out after surveying a lot of startups was timing. That their timing was the
Hmm.
right one, and the timing was perfect, and that is why these guys succeeded. So I absolutely agree that if we keep on waiting for perfection, it is never going to happen, and we are just.
That's that's a very famous TED talk, the
Mhm.
one that you've listened to, right? They give close to three examples. First is YouTube,
Mhm.
second is Airbnb, and the third I can't remember. Um, the first one, what they say about YouTube, right? The video players were the thing,
Exactly.
and the video players became a very sophisticated thing, which only people who knew a lot about computers would actually be able to play videos on their browsers. That's when YouTube came in.
Correct. And
Then
then there was a boom of the internet, and you can actually stream videos on the
correct. That was very appropriate timing. And second was for I think Airbnb, where they say that the 2008 fiasco had happened,
correct,
and
correct.
people were looking to earn money through alternate revenues, and they started giving out their homes to stay. So right, timing is the key.
Absolutely. So one other thing, which is I would say a little I won't say controversial, but people do have different perspective on this one. Would you say that you would want to prefer bootstrapping, or would you want to go ahead and go for a funding?
Honestly, being very very frank, whatever works for you. If you want to raise money. No bad deal about it. Just remember, there would be somebody else also sitting with you when you're making a decision, but you'd have the money, you'd have that sort of a backing. And while bootstrapping, there are the trade-off is you won't have a lot of money, but you will be the only one who will be making the decisions, and you will be the only one who will be reaping the benefits also. So I think it's a trade-off, and really there's no answer. Whatever works for you, go for it. If it's funding, go ahead, right? We have bootstrapped, and we have raised some money. So I think whatever works for you, you should go for it.
And because Sarthak, you've already raised some money, so would you say that that has been working well for you, or would you say that there are a couple of things that I am not very, I would want to change, but yeah, it was important at that point of time, and therefore we did it.
I think the amount of money that we've raised, right? It's decent for us, and I think I wouldn't say that I would go ahead and try to change something that has happened, because everything shapes up the way your product or way your company is right now. And I think I don't have any. I think I'm all right with it, and I would rather want to raise more money, and because that is what is needed sometimes when so the key is when you found your product market fit, you should go ahead and try to make your progress graph look like this. Because when you're making when you're trying to find a product market fit, your graph is like you find something today, you get rejected for something tomorrow, and the graph goes like this. But when you found a product market fit, I think that's exactly when you should raise. And I think till the amount that we've raised is sort of sufficient for us. We don't have a problem with it.
All right, great, Sarthak. Um, so let's say that um, uh, uh, one book or one resource that you would want to recommend young entrepreneurs and which you think really changed your life.
I think I hardly read books. I think that's something that I do want to do, because I mean, uh, I can't really think of a book right
Even if it is a
now.
movie or even if it is like a short YouTube video,
Hmm.
anything, any resource which you think you would want to refer somebody who is very young and want to start as an entrepreneur.
I think there's one podcast that I would recommend. Right, I very recently listened to it, and that's why it's very fresh in my memory. So it's the podcast between where in the conversation there's Kunal Shah, right? And the other person is Ranveer Alabadio from the Beer Biceps, right? They have this interesting conversation about how Indian demographic is set
Hmm.
and what works in India and what you should and what are some things that you should avoid uh, if you're born in India and what things you should look out for. I think that is a very nice podcast which I recently listened in the lockdown as well. I think you should go for it, and that really is a good one.
That absolutely is the good one, because if you see actually how what a prodigy Kunal Shah is, and
That's right.
how creatively he thinks, and how incurious he is. He's always.
Right.
So Sarthak,
I
to
think
see.
the book. I think the book I remember is How I Almost Blew It,
Mhm.
right? And it has sort of, I mean, short stories, a short backdrop of how these people were made, right? How companies like Matrimony, or how companies like InfoEdge or Free Charge, Kunal Shah himself, how were these made, right? What are the problems that they faced and how did they start it? I think that is a very nice book, because you hear these names all day, right? If you're somebody who's interested in entrepreneurship, who's a startup enthusiast, you'd come across these names every day. InfoEdge, how this is a mammoth, as a big company. Kunal Shah, who started second, sold his first, trusted by, I mean, many VCs really respect him for what he's done. I think you should read that book. I mean, anybody who's interested in knowing more about these names and how they came up, how they started it, right? I think that's a good book too. How I Almost Blew It.
Great, great. So Sarthak, coming to the last question for today, uh, we see that having a startup and being an entrepreneur is like continuous firefighting. You
Hmm.
sometimes even get burnt in this entire journey, and you are the only one who'll have to blow your own wound or lick your own wounds.
Hmm.
Uh, so what would you want to give as an advice or a lesson, or just a suggestion to
Hmm.
your friends, your juniors, young entrepreneurs who are starting very early? So any life lessons, anything that you stick by?
I think there's only one thing that I mean, I'm too early to give that sort of any advice in this domain, and there are much more people who hold an expertise and have more mature to talk about this topic. But one thing that I've always felt is that sometimes we do create our virtual boundaries in our minds, right? That we can't do this, or this is, I can't do this, right? Sometimes people think that, okay, this is something which only he did or she did, and that I don't think I will be ever be able to accomplish that. I think that is the only reason which is stopping you. I mean, the reason that you can't do it is the reason why you're not able to do it. If you actually set out or started pursuing something in that direction, maybe you do not get that, but at least you'll know what your capabilities are, or in that process you might discover something else which would be interesting. And it's rather going out and trying to uh, take opportunities head on and try to take challenges more head on, rather than thinking that I wouldn't be able to do it, or this is something which won't be I won't be able to do it. Because this very famous saying, right? People are really not lucky. They present themselves in enough opportunities so that they have more chances of being lucky. And I think that is very true, because most of the times we're not really being in that positions. Half of the times our mind is sort of creating that barrier. Okay, we can't do this because he or she did it, and he or she has these capabilities, and that's why they were able to do it. But probably you might also have some other capabilities which would help you propel. I think you have to be lucky, and you can only be lucky when you present yourselves in enough opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely, Sarthak. All right, so we have come and to the end of the entire talk session. And Sarthak, it was really nice hosting you. And I would want to thank everybody who tuned in. And thank you so much, everyone. And you can definitely connect with Sarthak on his LinkedIn. We'll keep his LinkedIn bio in the section below. So you can definitely check out his startup and the kind of work he's doing, and keep following him all throughout. Thank you so much, everyone, for
Thank
joining
you,
in.
Tushar. It was nice talking to you. Bye.
Thank you so much, buddy. Thank you.